In the last lesson, we enabled the fact caching. In this lesson, we're gonna start using those facts along with the magic variables, and we're gonna do our auto configuration for load balancers using the magic variables. So fact caching configuration is right there, and on the left hand side you see the facts being generated, and we're gonna use a code similar to this to create our configuration to discover, let's say, Ansible ith0 IPv4 address, and that comes from the fact. So you can actually go and look at let's say one of the files, and if you go and look at Ansible IPv4, search for that, and ith0, and we find out the IPv4 address for ith0, and that's what you see there. So IPv4 address is that IP address, and that's what we want to fetch. That's the IP address of that host that we want to fetch and add to our load balancer. Similarly, you can find any other properties that you would want with the host vars itself, the one we looked at in the magic variables. Now, where do we add this is inside the template, and for us, the the role is HA proxy, the one we've taken from Galaxie. So we'll go to the Galaxie, the roles HA proxy. You can also when you customize, you can also fork this out and then create your own role and then customize it. Or for now, we're gonna just make changes to the haproxy.cfg.j2. That's the Jinja2 template here. Let's examine this template, and if you go scroll down to the bottom of it, and this is where the the configuration for backend servers are being done. I'll just full screen this, and this is where it is being generated. So we have backend servers, and these backend servers, haproxy_backend server, the values for that come from the variable that we define as part of we have defined it as part of group vars. You can do it in multiple places, and if you go to the Galaxies, the haproxy role, and look at that variable description, this is where it has been defined. Let's say haproxy_backend_server. Whatever you define there, it gets added here. That's where the name and address for backend comes from. So this is iterating over a list of backends. Now we want to iterate over the list of hosts in our group called as app server. So we're going to use for host in group. That's another variable that we could use as part of if you look at the magic variables example, we can use that, and we're going to iterate over a group of hosts from our inventory. So that says groups, and this is the inventory group in that we have defined. That's the app server's inventory. That's what it's going to iterate over. And for host in groups app, now this backend name, we to change it with a magic variable, and that's where we start using host vars. We've seen the example of host vars earlier, but we start using it right here, and we're gonna get the host vars for the host in that iteration for host in groups app, and then we define which variable that we want to fetch from that host, and if it has been cached earlier, it will get fetched from there. So it's Ansible host name, that's what we want to add there. And similarly, we copy this and paste it here, and we want to fetch, this time it's the IP address. So it's gonna be the Ansible _eth0 IPv4. It's a multi-level variable, so we use those brackets to define it. So it's IPv4 and address, the same variable that we looked at earlier. That's the one on the bottom. That's IPv4 and address. So it's the Ansible eth0 IPv4 and the address. Let's add that here. So it's the host Ansible eth0 IPv4 address. We also need to define the port that it listens to. So port 80. That's very important. Don't miss that port part. And again, the host name, the same as the first magic variable, right? So host vars, host Ansible host name. We just copy and paste that same string here. Now this will allow us to iterate over our hosts. So whichever hosts are available at that point of time when you're running a playbook, it will iterate over that, fetch its variables including host names and IP address, and add one line each for that host in the configurations. And right now we have this in the inventory app1, app2, app3, and let's run it and see what happens. So I'm running that Ansible playbook, site.yaml this time. And I'm going to connect to the load balancer on the right hand side and watch the configuration. So watch -n1 and tail the file, config file. It errored out this time. It was not able to find that attribute. Let's find out why. And it's not able to find out the attribute, possibly because it was not run on that host earlier. The facts were not cached. So you'll have to sequence it in a right way so that the application servers are executed first in the playbook so that the facts are available when it actually goes to the load balancer. It has to be available. Now if you run this again, that should go through. All right, and once it goes through, you should see the web servers, application servers being added. Once it goes to the load balancers play, you should see on the right hand side 3 servers added, and that's what you see now. So we've been able to use magic variables to discover this information automatically, and if you add or remove a server, it will also reflect here, and this is a flexible way of doing these configuration, and that's how you use magic variables for service discovery.